Welcome back, everybody. It's Zach here, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. Let's probably go over the first 8 games of Week 4, going over every single player that I think is fantasy relevant and doing what I can to help you guys get your lineup set ahead of Week 4's matchups. We've got a pretty fun game on Thursday Night Football. I always try and get this one out before, like about a day before that, so you guys have time to keep that one in mind going into your matchups. Of course, as always, if you guys do have any specific start-sit questions, just let me know in the comments. I'll do my best to help you guys out. I feel like in general I've done a pretty good job. I got a couple wrong last week, but I think I got a lot more right, so hopefully you guys trust me there. I love it giving you guys input and seeing what you guys have to go about there. Friendly reminder as well, any guys that you have playing in the Thursday Night Football game, so like Devin Singletary, for example, who would normally be like a flex caliber player, make sure you take them out of your flex. You don't want to be playing guys in your flex on Thursday Night Football. Give yourself the added flexibility later on in the week so that you can have something in case something crops up, like, we've seen the A.J. Brown, Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, late week injury things pop up, and it's just better to not utilize your flex early on in the week in case something pops up and makes you need to make a late week pivot. So yeah, that being said, we got a lot of games to get into, and let's just get started with Thursday Night Football. Starting things off here with the first game of the week, we got the Cowboys going to the Giants in what might actually be a much more competitive game than maybe we were expecting. The Cowboys are now 1-2, as are the New York Giants. This is a very winnable division in general. The Commanders are they're in first place in the division right now, so it might be a lot more competitive division than we thought if the Cowboys and Eagles aren't as good as we thought they were going to be coming into the season. For the Cowboys, I think Dak, CeeDee Lamb, and Jake Ferguson, they're all basically must-starts. The Giants have not been a very good pass defense so far this season. Even Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper got it done a little bit last week. Dak, not necessarily a top or a guaranteed start because maybe you've got two quarterbacks, but he's a top 10 option. I'd be surprised if you're benching Dak in this one. I know CeeDee's been disappointing. This could easily be a get-right game for him. So you're playing CeeDee for sure. I don't really want to play a Dallas running back or a secondary wide receiver here. Keontae Turpin, Jalen Tolbert, Brandon Cooks, those guys are going to get involved, but we never know who to trust there. They're seemingly slowly shifting towards Rico Dowdle, so keep an eye on it, but I don't want to trust him at all in this matchup either. It's just the three primary passing options here, and then that's it for Dallas. For the Giants, Malik Neighbors, he's an auto start every single week. Just play him every single week. He's a stud. He's probably already a top 10 talent in the NFL at wide receiver. I can't imagine benching him. Devin Singletary, actually a really solid start this week as well. The Cowboys are on pace to be one of the worst run defenses in NFL history right now. Obviously, it doesn't help you to go up against the Ravens. The Ravens are obviously an elite rushing team, but they got absolutely pounded by the Saints in week 2. The Ravens really took that to heart, only threw the ball 15 times last week and just took it to the Cowboys. The Giants, I'd be surprised if they don't try and do that themselves. Devin Singletary's looked pretty good so far this season as well, so I think you're starting Devin Singletary unless your team's like super stacked. I do have a hard time believing the Giants will be able to do exactly what Baltimore did this last week. I think the Cowboys will get a little bit better. They're better on defense than they've been so far this season, but I think you're still playing Singletary, and you're not really playing anyone else for the Giants. They just don't have any talent outside of Neighbors and sort of Devin Singletary. Next up, we've got a sort of sneaky fun game here between the Bengals and the Carolina Panthers. The Bengals season might end this weekend. If they lose in Carolina, they'll be 0-4. It's safe to say that their season's going to be over effectively at that point. So this is a must-win game for Cincinnati. It's obviously a very winnable game playing a bad team in Carolina, or at least what we view as a bad team, despite what they did last week against the Raiders. For the Bengals, Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, they're going to be in your lineups. The Panthers' defense is not one that scares us. Chase got right last week. Burrow, they did lose, but he still put up a monster performance. You're playing both of those guys for sure. T. Higgins, he's a scary flex play for me. You can play him, but the upside really just doesn't feel like it's there. He wasn't as involved as I would have liked him to be in week 3. Seemed to just maybe open things up a little bit more for Jamar Chase than actually being utilized himself. Yoshi Voss was extremely involved last week, so that makes it really tough to really evaluate. I think I want to bench T. Higgins if I can. Zach Moss, a solid RB2 here. Good matchup against Carolina. This could be and should be a game in theory where the Bengals are winning. So I think Zach Moss would be a guy that's obviously got a great shot to score in this one, but who knows with the Bengals right now. There's no guarantee they go in and just win this game. Mike Gesicki, Yoshi Voss, they're both low-end starting options as well. I'd prefer not to. Eric All is very involved for the tight end position in Cincinnati. Makes Gesicki's role a little bit less scary. I don't want to trust him. And then Yoshi Voss, the third wide receiver in a game where they might not need to throw the ball as much. Just don't really trust that. For the Panthers, Deontay Johnson needs to be in lineups. I believe he leads the NFL in target share right now, or he's maybe number 2 behind Malik Neighbors. Had 14 targets last week. Looked really great. We've known he's a really good player, and if Andy Dalton can keep playing at a high level, which I think he will in a revenge game for him against Cincinnati, Deontay's probably a top 20 play at wide receiver this week. Chuba Hubbard, also a must-start, had 26 touches last week. This is a game environment where the Panthers could be competitive. Chuba's a good pass catcher and a good rusher. This offense just looks so much different with Andy Dalton. You're playing Chuba. Makes Andy Dalton a low-end streaming option as well. Again, the Bengals defense has been really bad so far this season. Dalton looked great. If you want to stream Andy Dalton, you definitely can. And then Xavier Legette, he's interesting. I don't really want to play him, but keep an eye on him. He's a low-end flex play in like deeper leagues, but he should be rostered in all leagues, I think, right now, just because with Adam Thielen missing the next 4 weeks, Legette could have an opportunity here to emerge, and he is a talented player. He was drafted in the first round for a reason. There is opportunity here for him to emerge as being like a reliable weekly option if things break right. Next up, we've got the Saints going to Atlanta here. The Saints are a little bit banged up. They lost their center last week. I think that could have played into why the offense struggled a little bit. It's always tough losing your center in the middle of the game. They're super important to offensive lines. Maybe play a little bit into why the Saints weren't able to really do as much as what you would have liked to see in week 3 against Philadelphia. A good matchup, though. The Falcons defense doesn't necessarily scare you. This should be a relatively not high scoring game, but you'll see enough points in this game that each of these sides can produce some fantasy relevant options here. Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, both of them need to be started for sure. I traded for Chris Olave in a league just yesterday. I traded Calvin Ridley and Jaden Reed for him. So I bought in on Olave. I think Olave is going to have a really great season here. I've got him in like 3 of my 8 leagues now, so I do obviously like Chris Olave. Alvin Kamara did miss practice on Wednesday. It was a hip and a rib injury that kept him out of practice, I believe. Nothing to be really concerned about yet. It's pretty common to see these veterans just miss Wednesday. They've got to put an injury on the injury report. Everybody's banged up right now, but it's probably just a veteran day of rest. So keep an eye on it. If he misses practice Thursday, we'll be more concerned there. Rashid Shaheed back to being a solid flex play, but we do know what the floor is. It's obviously 0. It's what he gave us in week 3. The ceiling's really high for Shaheed as well, though, so if you need some upside, I have no problem playing Shaheed. If you're in like a 2-flex league, a 12-team league, I think Shaheed's still a solid starting option. Derek Carr, I don't really want to start him in this one. Just don't think the game environment's going to be high scoring enough for the Saints to really justify starting Derek Carr in your fantasy lineup. For the Falcons, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, they're must-starts every single week. I know Bijan was a bit of a disappointment last week, kind of got bailed out with a touchdown, but he's still a really talented player, might be the best running back in the NFL. You're playing him. Drake London looks to be more involved. This Falcons offense seems to be getting things going a little bit as well. So reasons to be optimistic about Drake London. Darnell Mooney, decent flex option as well, coming off of 2 straight good games. He and Cousins clearly have a rapport here. I think you could certainly play Mooney if you needed to. And then Kyle Pitts, probably in your lineups. The tight end position is absolutely brutal. It's gross as always. Kyle Pitts obviously at least had a big play last week, but was relatively uninvolved other than that. But really, I mean, knowing that you can't have a 50-yard play out of your tight end, not many tight ends can even do that. So I think you're playing Kyle Pitts, but just, of course, understand he's a tight end. He's been inconsistent his whole career. The floor is 0. The ceiling's pretty high, though. Next up, we've got the Jaguars at the Texans here. The Jaguars are a mess. I think that Travis Etienne is probably the only one you really have to start, and even he struggled last week. It's really just tough for him to get anything going in a matchup against the Bills where they weren't able to run the ball because they were down like 30 at the start of the game. Obviously, just a really bad situation for everyone in Jacksonville right now. Christian Kirk and Brian Thomas, they're both low-end flex plays. It was nice to see Kirk get more involved last week, 8 catches for 79 yards. We know he's a good player. It'll be interesting to see how these targets sort of shift around. Evan Ingram could be back this week. I don't really want to play any of them except maybe Evan Ingram because the tight end position is just so bad. But like Brian Thomas is an explosive player, could always hit on a big play. Christian Kirk's the more possession caliber receiver. They're going to give up points to this Texans team, which, I mean, if you want to think long term, maybe there is some upside for the fantasy assets in Jacksonville just because this defense is so bad. But Trevor Lawrence looks absolutely awful as well. There's nothing working in Jacksonville right now. So I think it's ETN and probably nobody else if you can do that. For the Texans, you're starting everybody. Stroud, Dell, Collins, Diggs, all of them are in your lineups for sure. Dalton Schultz, a low-end streaming option. I'd prefer not to go there just because it's tough to rely on him any given week just with how many options there are in Houston. And then for the running backs in Houston, Mixon would be a great play if he does start this one. If he misses, though, Cam Akers I think is an equally great play. You're playing either one of those guys. If Mixon misses, you're playing Akers. If Mixon's in, you're playing Joe Mixon this week. Next game here is going to be the Broncos at the Jets. The Broncos, they won last week and still didn't really do anything for fantasy. You had Sutton go 7 for 68. None of the running backs got anything done. You had McLaughlin with the 1 touchdown. Tyler Bidet had 9 carries for 70 yards. Just nobody looked good, really, from a fantasy standpoint. I know Bo Nix looked good, and it was good to see that if you're a Bronco fan. Maybe something to be optimistic there for Denver. But I think I want to sit every single Bronco this week if I can. Like, Sutton would be the play you want to make if you have to. But the Jets have a really good pass defense. Sauce Gardner could easily shadow Courtland Sutton in this one. It's been just sort of like a revolving door at wide receiver. Other than that, you had Lil Jordan Humphrey have a decent game last week. Vele should be back. I mean, like Marvin Mims is not involved enough. Troy Franklin's not involved enough. Like, there's just a lot of pieces in this offense. Nobody really stands out at all, so I can't really trust anybody in Denver. I'm not really going to play any Broncos if I can avoid it. For the Jets, Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson, really the only two the only two Jets that I want to play here. Not great matchup. It's going to be a pretty low-scoring game, I think it's fair to say. Don't be shocked if Garrett Wilson lays an egg in this game. He's obviously going to get the Patrick Surtain treatment. Surtain shut down DK, Pickens, and then Mike Evans over the first 3 weeks. Surtain's an elite corner. He can certainly shut down Garrett Wilson this week as well. So you're playing Garrett Wilson because you have to, but I mean, honestly, again, I talked about him on a sell high. I'd try to trade him this week before you see another dud of him, and the schedule only gets harder for the Jets going forward, too. So I'm concerned about Garrett Wilson, but you're still playing him just because you kind of have to. Next, we got the Vikings at the Packers. For the Vikings, Justin Jefferson, Aaron Jones, they're going to be in your lineups. Really fun revenge game narrative here for Aaron Jones. He wanted to be in Green Bay, and they basically showed him the door so they could bring in Josh Jacobs. So kind of rooting for Aaron Jones there. He still seems like he's got a lot of juice left. It'd be fun to watch him go off against his old team. Sam Darnold, not a bad streaming option as well. He's obviously looked fantastic. The Packers' defense has looked really good so far as well, though, so there are things to be potentially concerned about there. I don't love the matchup. I talked about it on waivers this week about how two of the best streaming options are Darnold and Dalton. I prefer Andy Dalton if that gives you any context, but long-term, Sam Darnold looks great. I think he's certainly a guy that could just put up a really good year this year. So Darnold's totally fine. If you need to play him, you can. Jordan Addison could return this week. He'd be a low-end starting option if he returns. I don't like playing guys in their first week off of injury, especially these like lower-tier guys. Like obviously, if Justin Jefferson misses the game, he comes back, you're playing him right away. But with Jordan Addison, he's not a primary option in the offense. We don't know what his snap count's going to be. I think I'd prefer just to play Justin Jefferson and Aaron Jones in this one. But if Addison does miss, you could play Jalen Naylor as like a really low-end flex play. For the Packers, Josh Jacobs, he should be in lineups regardless. The usage was concerning in week 3. We saw Emmanuel Wilson get involved. We'll see how repeatable that is. I don't know if Emmanuel Wilson's really going to be a reliable weekly part of this Vikings offense or of this Packers offense. So you're playing Josh Jacobs, but just keep an eye on that. If Jordan Love is active, which I think he's going to be, I do want to start Jaden Reed here. The Vikings defense has been absolutely fantastic, but I think Jordan Love and this Packers offense can make it work here. Jaden Reed looks great. I'm playing him if Jordan Love is active for sure. And then it makes Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson some decent flex options. Doubs the safer play, Watson more of the upside play. If Love sits, though, I think Jaden Reed just becomes a low-end flex option because they're going to manufacture some touches for him, and then I'm going to sit every other pass catcher here. I don't want to play Christian Watson or Romeo Doubs if you've got Malik Willis. This Vikings defense is a different animal than the Titans defenses that they've seen in the last couple of weeks. This is going to be a tougher matchup for the Packers, so you want Jordan Love out there if you want to trust the pass catchers. Jordan Love, you can play him if he's active. It's a little iffy. He'd be like a low-end quarterback one option. I think I'd prefer him to Darnold, but that's like a really close decision to make here. Just tough, again, coming off of an injury. Shouldn't really limit him, but the Vikings defense has looked really good, so I think things will be better for the Packers offense after this week when their schedule softens up a little bit, but you can still play Jordan Love if you need to. Next game here is going to be the Steelers going into Indianapolis to play the Colts. Kind of feels like the Steelers could win this game without scoring on offense. It feels like Anthony Richardson's due to throw up a couple interceptions. I wouldn't be shocked at all if you see a defensive score by Pittsburgh this week. So I don't think this is going to be a very high-scoring game for Pittsburgh. They're not going to need to do a lot. Their recipe is pretty clear. It's just play non-losing football on the offensive side of the ball, play really conservative, run the ball a lot, take care of the ball, and let their defense win games for them. And it's going to work again against the Colts. The Colts will certainly lose the game themselves here. Najee Harris, a great play against this awful run defense in Indianapolis. Jalen Warren's going to miss this game. Makes Cordarrelle Patterson like a sneaky deep league play if you need to go there as well. But Najee should get 20-plus touches against a really bad run defense. You're playing Najee for sure. George Pickens, a solid wide receiver 3 play here. Like I said, I don't think there'll be a lot of passing volume in this week, so it's going to be tough to necessarily see big plays. You're going to need a big play out of George Pickens to get a really solid fantasy performance here, but I still think you can play him if you need to. Anthony Richardson should be on benches along with every single other part of this Colts passing offense. This defense in Pittsburgh is absolutely legit. Richardson's going to turn the ball over a few times. No way you should drop Anthony Richardson. I've seen him be dropped in 1 or 2 leagues so far this week that I'm in. That's ridiculous. Don't drop Anthony Richardson, but it's a really brutal schedule this week. You're not going to play Richardson in this game. And then Jonathan Taylor, he's a lineup lock, workhorse running back for a team that needs him badly. So you're playing Jonathan Taylor, and this isn't going to be one of his better games this season. Next up, we've got the Rams going to Chicago here. Good matchup for Caleb Williams and the Bears here, but it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Caleb did sort of, in some ways, take a step forward last week, despite really looking bad from a turnover standpoint. For the Rams, Kyren Williams, really the only Ram I want to play. The pass catcher's there, a bit of a crapshoot. It's sort of like a wide receiver by committee they've got going on there. Tutu Atwell's the big play guy. We saw Demarcus Robinson not be involved enough. Tyler Johnson didn't really get anything going. Jordan Whittington wasn't as involved as some people might have hoped. So I don't want to play any pass catchers for the Rams. It's basically going to be Kyren Williams and nobody else. For the Bears, I don't want to play any of their running backs. I just don't know what's going on in that backfield right now. DeAndre Swift has looked absolutely awful. Roshan Johnson got more involved last week. I think he needs to be rostered, but I need to see him get more snaps and more touches for me to really trust him ever. I think Khalil Herbert might be their best running back, and they're not using him. Just an absolute crapshoot in the Bears backfield as well. I'm not playing any of those guys till we get some more clarity. For the Bears pass catchers, DJ Moore, a low-end wide receiver 3 for me. It sounds like Keenan Allen's going to return here. It's obviously going to cut into the target share of everybody involved here. Moore just hasn't been as involved as you'd want him to be either. It's rough with Caleb Williams not performing at a high level right now. Excited to see what Rome Odunze can do this week. Obviously, really sort of breaking out in week 3. Can't start him. Just again, I need to see it more. I need to see Caleb Williams play at a high level and not throw the ball 55 times in a negative game script for me to really trust anything there. So DJ Moore is really the only Bear I'm really starting other than maybe Cole Kmet. It was nice to see him break out last week. It'll be interesting to see if Keenan Allen coming back really negatively impacts his target share. We want to make sure that Cole Kmet's still the primary starter as well. Gerald Everett finally got phased out last week, so hopefully that continues. I spent a decent amount of fab on Kmet in at least 1 or 2 leagues this week, so I like Kmet going forward. I think there's obviously a path towards Caleb Williams leveling up and having a really good second half of the season, sort of like CJ Stroud did, and if that happens, then all these guys are winners, but I need to see it. I think we're still a little bit too early, so I'm not trusting any of these guys just yet other than DJ Moore and then maybe Kmet. So that'll do it for the part 1 video of my starts and sits this week. So that was the first 8 games. Tomorrow or maybe Friday morning, you guys will get the starts and sits for the remaining 8 games of the week. So stay tuned for those games. If you guys do have any specific start-sit questions, just let me know in the comments below. I love helping you guys out with your lineups there. A lot of fun, really fun seeing what decisions you guys have to make. It helps me make my own decisions as well, just having to think about what decisions you guys have to make. So a lot of fun there. Appreciate all you guys for all that. If you guys want to make sure you don't miss the future videos, so the future start sit video, the Sunday morning live stream that'll go live at 9 a.m. Pacific time, 12 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday morning, so 1 game before the games kick off. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. That way you can get notifications when I go live and when new videos come out. That way you don't miss any of the content. It's all free for you guys. I'm just here to help you guys out, and hopefully you guys are finding it useful. If you did make it this far in the video as well, please do give it a thumbs up. It just helps with the algorithm and helps you know that I'm doing a good job and all that. So yeah, really appreciate you guys. It's been a lot of fun. We got a lot of football to go, and it should be a fun week of football. So appreciate you guys a lot, and I'll catch you with the next one. Peace. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.